Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Alexandra, for inviting me here. It's a real honor. I'm not used to being looking down at people. So, but apparently, I've been reading Time magazine, and I've been reading lots of magazines, and mindfulness is all the rage. It's very hip. And so this is good, and so I'm going to make you all mindful in about 40 minutes. I think that'll be plenty of time. So yes, mindfulness has gotten popular. All good professors, I have my student do some research for me, and she found out that she just studied the number of publications that have mentioned mindfulness over the past 50 years. And it was very, very few until the last 10 years, and it just shot up. Thousands and thousands of publications and thousands of studies on mindfulness. Mindfulness in schools, in charter schools, and in some public schools, for businesses, for even the military. Sports teams are doing mindfulness meditation, contemplative practices, and even a congressman is doing it. And so this trend is being criticized by some and kind of lauded by others, and I think there's a lot to criticize, and I think there's a lot to praise. I mean, more mindfulness is good. I can't see anything wrong with that. But this idea that taking these practices to make you a more productive worker. There was recently the mindfulness kind of head of mindfulness at Google, which that's a job, by the way, now. And so tell your kids not to give up hope. They can become that. They can become English majors and then go on to teach mindfulness at Google. So that he said that it made happier workers, which made them work with clients more, and so they could make more money, and that's good. And that's a good thing. And so, but what are the origins of the study of mindfulness meditation? What are the origins of the practice? I want to talk a little bit about that today. Talk about the Buddhist origins of these, or the Buddhist contributions to these things. And so we have a little bit more awareness of what these things come from. Of course, the person most famous for introducing mindfulness meditation and stress reduction practices is Jon Kabat-Zinn, and I'm sure you all know him. Many of you might have even looked into a course, or you might have read one of his books or studies. And he was influenced by many Buddhists early on in his studies, people like Thich Nhat Hanh and people like Nyanaponika, who was actually a German who became a Sri Lankan monk. And through these practices, these Buddhist meditation practices, developed what he liked to call mindfulness without religion, and he wanted to strip it from its cultural context, he wanted to strip it from its language, and make it more accessible to people who didn't want to practice Buddhism as a religion. And it was very successful and has been very successful. And he stresses in his work, and many other people have followed him, and many other people were doing it contemporary along with him throughout the 80s and the 90s, stressed the importance of self-observation. The key to that is without judgment, okay? So observing yourself without judgment. Self-acceptance, self-regulation, self-actualization, kind of going back to Maslow, and this idea that this was a self-help program, a self-help and a healthy program, that exercising the mind, building awareness with the mind, the awareness of yourself and your thoughts, is as effective, if not more effective, than exercising the body. And a lot of these mindfulness practices being introduced at businesses is that it's making our workers happy, we're getting less incidents of sickness, we are having more productive workers, and just as a company might encourage, or a university or a hospital would encourage workers to be healthy, and they have wellness programs, then a mindfulness program is like that. And so these are all very, very effective. And they're more effective, and we see over time that these publications is that mindfulness and Buddhism used to be in the same publication. We used to find the trigger words in this. And they've really split, where mindfulness and Buddhism have split over time, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, and where they're not associated very much together. Let's go back to the Buddhist ideas of mindfulness. Now, from the previous slide, you saw a lot of the word self in it, right? Self-regulation, self-acceptance, self-transcendence, even Maslow talked about, self-actualization. And this is often the way that Buddhist meditation is looked at, that this is a solitary practice. A solitary practice of meditating. Sometimes maybe you have the idea of the monk or the nun in the cave meditating, or alone in a small kuti or a monastic cell, that this is a practice of calming yourself, watching your breath, studying the way you move, watching your thoughts, maybe even trying to stop your own thoughts, getting down to the raw kind of nature of what is the self, the raw nature of you. And certainly there's part of the tradition that does that. But more often, and actually much more often, meditation is actually a community practice and it's a group practice. Mindfulness is done almost never alone. And this idea of monasticism or monos, that it's somehow a solitary practice, that that's why you're going into it, to get away from the world, to get away from society, to get away from the chaos of everyday life, to be, in a sense, getting to know yourself, whatever that is. That is quite odd for most Buddhist practice. Monasteries are very busy places. For places like Southeast Asia, if you have less than 2 monks, you can't call yourself a monastery. Okay? That is just called a religious office. Okay? Is that a monastery is supposed to have lots of people, lots of nuns, lots of monks, generally always very strict gender separation. They can interact during the day, but separation in the evenings and living quarters. They are places for community development. They are places for daycare often. This is one of the most common uses of monasteries throughout Asia is free daycare. You have a lot of gentle people in robes that will take care of your children for free, which would be nice. I would like my children's daycare to be free. And they say I put my children with the monks, and then I get to go off and do other things. So that monasteries serve a social function, and mindfulness is done generally in a social way. That you're mindful during doing your monastic work. You're mindful doing meditation, often in groups. You're mindful in chanting. You're mindful in conducting a funeral. You're mindful in conducting a wedding. And when I was a monk, I did many of these things. I grew up as an Irish Catholic, a very strict Irish Catholic, and in Philadelphia. And that when I became a monk, and I was very young when I became a monk, it seemed very similar to my Catholic upbringing, is that monastery served a lot of different roles in the community. It served roles of doing life cycle rituals for the people in the community, but also a place just to go and hang out, a place that, in a sense, was safe to date. I remember when I was young, all the girls I ever dated up until I was about 16, I met at Friday Night Fish Fry. And if you know anything about Catholics, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And Friday Night Fish Fry, because we got to eat fish on Fridays, because the Pope says, I guess, that this was sure, you can go to Friday Night Fish Fry. The secret of all of us is we're all going there because we were going there to flirt, right? Monasteries are like that too. You have lots of people in the community coming to this is a safe place to hang out and do things. A monastery, and this is why I teach a course on monastic living, and I'll get to that later. A monastery is the physical location of what Buddhists call the Sangha. Sangha simply means community. It's just a group. And it's a Pali word, Pali Sanskrit word. And a Sangha has many purposes: serving the community, providing historical preservation, teaching, passing down the teachings, doing rituals. But one of the kind of core philosophies of being an ordained member of the Sangha, being serious about meditation, to be serious about be a professional monk, in a sense, a professional nun, is to dismantle the self. Not to build the self up, not to get to know the self, not to kind of probe your inner voice. It's about systematically dismantling everything you know about yourself, getting down to the sense of self and seeing that as an illusion. And seeing yourself as not a single person, but a person made up by all the influences around you, and studying those influences. The process of doing this dismantling of yourself does not start with meditation, and it does not start with the mind. It starts with the body. You change the way you look, you change the way you dress, you change your daily agenda, and slowly yourself will dismantle. And it doesn't involve necessarily philosophical reflection, ethical reflection. It is more, and my students get shocked when I say this, but it's a lot more like the military, is that you lose yourself, and the best way to do that, is getting rid of the idea of that you're an individual to start with. In the Sangha, when you join a monastery, and monasteries are different all across Buddhist Asia, some take on very strict roles, some have very little roles, rules these days, were precepts, we call them. I was a part of a very kind of orthopraxic sect in Laos and Thailand. You have groups in Korea, groups in parts of Japan and Tibet that have very few precepts, very few rules. Okay? But they do start with the body, and that's called the Vinaya, this idea that this is a group of precepts, the Vinaya. And then it monitors everything about how you look. And these are not moral rules. These are not monastic vows you take. They are physical rules to begin with. You shave your head. You shave your eyebrows. Your eyebrows are a very distinctive part of your face. If you shave off, I have very kind of thick caterpillar eyebrows. If you shave off your eyebrows, it changes the way your face looks. You are given a robe. You are given a new name, okay, a name that you don't choose. I wanted to choose a cool monk name, but I didn't get to choose. That's not the point. The point is that we're getting rid of your identity. You lose your shoes, you lose your possessions, and things like this. Some monks break a lot of rules, some nuns break a lot of rules, but this is the ideal, and the stricter the monastery, the more it's like that. And so I remember I was very young when I was doing this, and that we almost never heard sermons about Buddhist ethics or Buddhist philosophy. I was asked to give a sermon one time. I remember I had been a monk for about 6 weeks, and the abbot said, "It's your turn to give the sermon to the village." And I really kind of studied for this, and it was a big deal for me. And I analyzed texts, and I had quotes and all of these things. And it was a total bomb. The community absolutely hated it. Absolutely. He's like, that was the worst sermon I've ever heard. That was awful, Whitey. He used to call it Farang, which is like Whitey. That was the worst thing I've ever heard. And he goes, the idea is that you're not there telling them what to think. We talk about what to do, not what to think. And it's what you do that is important. For example, you start off your day, and I start off my day kind of looking at your calendar, right? Some of us are very good about this. We keep it on our phone or on a computer. Somebody has an address book or a calendar book. Some people kind of have rough kind of Post-it notes all over their computer screen or over their refrigerator, right? And you have this agenda, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to plan it out, and I'm going to be responsible, and I'm going to be on time, and my mom's going to be proud, okay? I have a long-term agenda. I have a short-term agenda. I have an agenda for my kids. I have an agenda for my neighborhood. I have an agenda for the Philadelphia Eagles tonight, hopefully, because I got a lot of money riding on it. But you have your agenda. And the similar thing about my agenda and your agenda, the thing that links us all, is that we're the stars of it, right? We are the protagonists for our own agenda. We are the protagonists for our lives. I will do this. I will meet this person. It will serve this person. It will serve that purpose. And it could be just an entertainment person. You're meeting friends. You're having a drink. Those things, too. It doesn't have to have a necessarily utilitarian purpose, but that's a utilitarian. You're building communities, right? And you go through your day filling out your agenda. Some of us think long-term or short-term about it. But the similar thing is that it's always us planning it. And in monastic life, you lose the power to plan your agenda. I couldn't choose when I was going to perform a funeral. A person dies. You're next up to do it. With a few other 4 monks that do this. You have to bless the water buffalo. The community got a new motorcycle. You have to bless and protect that. You have these, in a sense, duties to do, but you don't get to choose to do them, just as you don't get to choose how you wear your hair, wear your shoes. And this, in a sense, builds up mindfulness over time. I remember I was charged with bailing out the boat. Okay, we were a monastery on an island in the middle of the river, and we had a canoe. And we would have to take that canoe every day to go beg for food, right? You don't actually beg, you just walk around with an open bowl. So in the morning, in the rainy seasons, when it was the few months it was raining, my job every day was this was like this old, kind of cut milk container, and I would bail the boat out. 431, it would fill right up to the top every night, and it was about 431 each time. You had this every morning at 4:30 in the morning, bailing this boat out, right? I felt like I was in the Karate Kid or something. It was like the dumbest thing I've ever done. And I hated it. I hated it. So one day I went to my abbot and I go, listen, I've been bailing this boat out and I have a really good idea. Why don't at night I pull the boat on the shore, flip it over? Won't fill up with rain. I can do something else. I clean the monastery. I'll clean your monastic cell. I won't have to like stand for an hour in that water in the morning. And he's like, oh, and this is all loud, but he's like, oh, Whitey, oh my gosh, or oh my Buddha, I guess. So like, oh, that's genius. Oh, I've only lived in this forest for 60 years. And he was 67 at the time, and he had become a novice when he was 7. So, and he goes, oh, none of us stupid loud people have ever thought about that. Oh my gosh, Whitey, thank goodness, this is why we needed a Whitey. We needed you to tell us how to properly bail out our boat, or not bail out our boat. And he goes, I love the idea, but I'm not going to do that idea, and we're not going to follow your idea. And you know why? And I go, and I knew I was going to get it, right? And I go, no, why? And he goes, because we got a Whitey to bail the boat out. And this idea, it's not about your ideas, it's not about your opinion, it's not about a self-help system. It's about following rules, physical rules, for a long period of time. Over and over again. Hopefully, the following of this vinaya over time will lead to wisdom, will lead to mindfulness, will lead to more selflessness over time. Wisdom in Buddhism is, like any religion, difficult to define. And Buddhists are really great about pretending to define things, but not really ever getting to the point. I like my talk, that they dance around the issue a lot of what is wisdom. And if you look at most traditions, they do this too. Because if they didn't do it and we had quick, easy answers, we would all be much smarter, right? But wisdom comes when you have, in a sense, practice over time eroding the self. You become more mindful, not of yourself, but of others. You become more mindful of nature around you, and whether that's in a city or in a forest, is that it makes you think, in a sense, away from yourself. And when Buddhists teach wisdom, or when it's supposed to arrive, it's supposed to arise in the idea that you will live in what they call 4 mansions, 4 simultaneous mental mansions. Okay? And I think all of us, and maybe one time we wish like we could have that little apartment in Paris, or maybe that little place in Tokyo, you know what I mean, or a place in Malibu. Like kind of 4 places we would love if we had everything in the world to live, right? And these are 4 mental mansions, 4 places that you would like to reside in your mind all the time, right? Where the weather was always perfect and your neighbors were always helpful and nice. These are called the Brahma Viharas. Ubeka, Mutida, Metta Garana. Metta Garana often go together. Okay? And I'm going to tell you a story about each one of them, which is supposed to teach about Buddhist senses of mindfulness. And then I'll teach about what I do in a course in the University of Pennsylvania around these themes. So the first, Ubeka. Ubeka is the mental mansion of indifference. A mindful person is an indifferent person. They are indifferent to people's individuality. They are indifferent to people's backgrounds. They are indifferent to people's kind of desires. They are indifferent to people's identities. And this sounds quite harsh. But to be truly compassionate, you have to be truly indifferent, to be freely compassionate to everyone. And there's a story that often goes along with this. This is told in many different contexts, and it's about a young monk. Well, he's 36. So. He's been a good monk all his life. He became a monk when he was a child, and at 20 years old, he became a fully ordained monk. He had worked in the village. He had done rituals. He had been a good counselor. He was a good monk. And he decided, it's 36, it's me time. It's time for me to really, all these things I've been doing for everybody else, it's time I worked on my own mind. It's time I gained awakening. It's time I looked for Buddhahood. It's time I, in a sense, became enlightened. So he goes up the hill, and there's a cave in the foothills that overlooks the village. And it's just far enough away that he won't be bothered. And he goes into that cave, and he makes a vrata, a vow. And he says, I will not leave this cave until I have full Buddhahood, full awake. Buddha means the one who is woken up, until I wake up to reality. goes into that cave, and he meditates. Now, he has no food and he has no water, but he has to survive for 12 years. So every once in a while, he sticks his tongue out to catch the drip off the stalactite, right? So that's the top tight, right? Top, right? So okay. And he catches it, and sucks on the minerals, and he spits it out. You get a little calcium, little vitamins, he spits it out. So for 12 years, meditate, spit, meditate, spit, meditate, spit, meditate, spit. Nothing. Nothing. He has no insight. He has no wisdom. He's thinner. He's older. And he's like, screw the Buddha. I'm out of here. Leaves the, I probably shouldn't say that on the tape, but leaves the cave, is going down to the village and says, I need myself a drink. I'm going to go get a drink. And he gets outside of the village saloon, and he says, you know what? I made a vrata. I made a vow. I better go back up. Went back up. 12 more years. Meditate, spit, meditate, spit, meditate, spit. Nothing. Nothing. Walks down. I'm going to go to the brothel. And I've earned this. He gets outside the brothel. He's really thinking about it, and he says, my vow, my vow. Goes back up. He said, I'm going to follow the rules, the precepts of the monastic life. Goes back into the cave. Meditate, spit, meditate, spit, meditate, spit. 12 years. Now he's 72, 36 years on either side. He spent half of his life. He doesn't want the brothel. He doesn't want to drink. Nothing has happened. He doesn't feel any wiser. He doesn't know himself any better. He doesn't know what he wants, but he knows he's a failure. I don't even deserve to wear these robes. There's something wrong with me. Why should it take this long? And he starts walking down the hill. And he doesn't know what he's going to do. He's just going to walk for a while. And he sees a dog on the side of the road. And the dog has this huge gash in its side. It must have been hit by some sort of cart or something. A big gash, and the dog is panting, and it's got this open wound. He's like, oh, poor dog. Oh, what happened here? Oh, this poor dog. This dog is in so much pain. I got to do something. And so he's, okay, I gotta first close this wound somehow. Okay, I'm gonna rip my robes on. I'll tie it up. And he gets down to look at the wound. He's like, oh, the wound was covered in maggots. It's teeming in maggots. He's like, oh, okay. Well, before I bind up, I gotta get the maggots out, right? And so he's like, okay. And he goes to pick up a maggot. He's like, oh, wait a second. This is like a maggot party. This is like the maggot nightclub. Like, no, this is the best maggot day ever, right? I mean, how often do the maggots get a fresh dog, right? It's like, come on, I can't ruin this for the maggots. They're loving this. And, and I'm old, and my fingers are weak, and I'm thin, but even I will crush the maggot if I pick it up, and I don't want to crush a maggot. I mean, I'm taking them away from the party, and then I'm killing them. I can't do that. Oh, here's what I'll do. Maggots, that dog's dying, and so the maggots will lose their meal soon. But I'm still alive, and so he gets a rock, and he slashes his shoulders open, and he pulls it back, and the bone is exposed, right? And he's like, okay, I got to get the maggots from that wound into this wound. But I can't. Oh, here's what I'll do. And he sticks his tongue into the wound, and the maggots, I'll click them like a bush. I'll hold them in my, one at a time. It's going to take a while, but I better get started. And so he gets down there, and he puts his tongue in the wound, and the first maggot climbs on his tongue, and boom, the Buddha's standing there. And he looks at the Buddha, and excuse my language, and he goes to the Buddha, where the fuck have you been? in Lao. And so, and he's like, get out of the way. Out of the way. I'm taking care of this dog. I don't have time for you. And the Buddha says, it's a thing I do, illusion. I'm the dog, it's a trick. And it's a lesson I'm trying to teach you. And he's like, shut up, Buddha. I was trying to take care of that dog. He said, get it, you stupid monk. I'm the dog. And he goes, you know what? Whatever. Buddha, you had 36 years to teach me a lesson. You had 36 years. I don't need you. And he goes, what are you talking about? I was sitting right next to you for 36. I sat next to you in that cave the entire time. You never noticed me. He goes, of course, I know everything about that cave. How could I have not noticed you? And he goes, look at me. And he's looking at the Buddha, and he looks down at his robes, and it's covered in spittle. And that when we go into our own minds, when we focus on ourself and our self-actualization, is that we don't notice the person suffering right next to us. Like, how many people send money to a cause or reach out when they hear about earthquakes or landslides. But then they shoot daggers into the back of the person in line in front of them at Starbucks because they're ordering for their whole fucking office, right? You know what I mean? Like, oh, Jesus, right? Or you're on the bus, you know what I mean? And you're buh, you know, we all do it. And the person next to you is clearly having a bad day. But that's okay because you don't want their bad day to interrupt your bad day. It's our mindfulness. We'll meditate on the bus because we're going to improve our meditation skills and ignore the people suffering us around us. The next aspect of Buddhist wisdom and mindfulness is mudita. It's a difficult thing to translate. It's often translated as sympathetic joy, but I'm not exactly sure what that means. So it's joy, it's celebrating when your enemies do well, which is very difficult, which is much more than compassion, right? Like I'm very compassionate to my daughter because she's awesome and she's 8 and she's cute, right? And so I'm compassionate to her. I give her things. I like her. I tell her special, you know, all of these things like we do to our own children. Okay? But it's easy to be compassionate to my daughter, right? It's hard to celebrate when enemies do well. And there's a story told about this. There was a young novice, this is in Japan, and he's about 16, and he's done extremely well in his studies. And his abbot goes to him and says, you know, you've done very, very well, and I'm thinking of really advancing, and you're going to become your own abbot. I think you're ready, even though you're so young, to become a full monk. Oh, thank you, that's a great honor, thank you very much. He goes, you just have one more task to do, and if you do that task, you will become a full monk. Oh, absolutely, anything you ask, abbot, anything you ask. He goes, you need to take this message, and you need to deliver it to a friend of mine who's another monk across the river and over a hill. And you got to get there quick, because I want you to get there before the day ends. Of course, so he takes off. And one of the Vinaya rules is that you can't lift your knee above your waist anytime or your elbow above your shoulder anytime. This is to keep you, you know, so you don't dance and you don't kind of entertain yourself in a sense. You keep a physical, you know, you always know where your limbs are doing in a sense. Yeah. So he takes off as fast as he can without running. And he gets to the river, and there's a small bridge. And there's a samurai standing in front of the bridge. And the samurai is got this little sly smile on his face. He's like, I'm so excited. Novice gets up, and the samurai's back on the bridge. He goes, I need to get a message I got to get across, full monk. Okay, can you get out of the way? And he goes, nah, novice. I'm so happy you're here. My master, my teacher, gave me a task. I had to kill the first 100 people who crossed the bridge. Then I will become a true warrior. And so I've killed 99. And I would love to cut out work early. Lower back pain, rotator cuff from all the killing, that I would love, herniated disc, all the stuff that you get from a lot of that killing, right? And so he's like, so I got to kill you now. He said, oh, man, that's what your abbot said or your master said? Man, I'd love to help you out, but, we got this kind of rule versus rule here. And he goes, well, no, it's an easy problem to solve. I'll kill you, and then the problem is solved. And he goes, but wouldn't it be nice if we both could follow our masters and both achieve what we really want, true monkhood and true warriorhood? Well, that would be nice, but it's not going to happen for you. He goes, how about this? Did your master tell you which side of the bridge you had to kill people on? He goes, oh, no, absolutely. If they come from the other side, I jump over there, I kill them. I'm really good at this. And he goes, good. How about I cross the bridge, I deliver the message, I come right back, you kill me going the other way. And I'm going to, it's late in the day, there's not anybody on the path, I'm going to do it, right? I'm going to go and do it. Because you're just going to run away. You're not going to come back the same way. I'm not a fool. And he goes, no, I really will. And he goes, you know what, novice, you are the most entertaining person I've tried to kill in a long time. And I really love you. And go do your thing, and I'll just hunt you down, because I know you're going to come back. But I'm going to get you. And don't worry about it. I'm going to complete my task. Go. So the novice goes, delivers a message, comes right back. He goes, wait, what are you doing here, novice? He goes, well, no, the killing. I did my thing, true monk, killing. Really? Yeah, let's get to the killing, right? Because you want to cut out early, you said, right? You have something to do, it's happy hour, you want to go home. So, okay, that's odd, novice, but okay. He goes, so let's talk about how we're going to do the killing. I could pretend like I'm running away, and you could chase me, and it'd be really fun, and you could show your skills. And he goes, nah, I'm tired. Everybody runs and screams and begs for mercy. I don't want to go through that. And he goes, okay, how about this? I will get down on all fours and I'll stick my neck out and you can, boom, just cut the head right off. It'll be really nice. He goes, nah, all that bending, I really don't want to bend down that far. Oh, how about this? I will stand in front of you and I'll put my head to the side and you can just go right kind of through me, right? He says, oh, novice, I love that. I wish more people did that. Oh, and he takes a couple practice swings. Oh my gosh, novice, this is perfect. This is great. I love it. He goes, okay, and he puts his sword down, ranges ahead. Okay, we're good. And he goes, okay, you're all ready? Samurai goes, he goes, now, do you want my eyes open or do you want them closed? And he goes, you know what, close them up because you're freaking me out a bit. And so closes his eyes, and the novice is there, and he waits, and he waits, and he waits. Nothing happens. And he waits, and he feels a little bit of a warm breeze and a little bit of moisture, kind of, you know, a warm rain, you know, that rare warm rain. And he feels this moisture coming in the air, and he feels the rain about to come, and he waits, and he slowly opens his eyes to see, and he sees something quivering, and he's not sure what it is, and he opens his eyes more, and it's the samurai's lips, and they're almost touching his lips, and they're moist, and there's tears in the samurai's eyes. And he's shaking. He goes, oh, samurai, I'm sorry. Did I hurt your feelings? You're good at this. You're a good killer. You're clearly good. You can do it. Don't give up. You can do it. You're so close. You can do it. You want to do it another way? Should we talk more about it? Come on. Don't give up. And the samurai, with a tear in his eye, goes, I found my master. I found what I was looking for in my training. This idea, it's about someone else and about celebrating when they do well, being mindful of their needs, even if you don't approve of their needs, even if you don't approve of their gender, even if you don't like their lifestyle or the way they're leading their life, is celebrate that. The last two are mete garuna, and the last story I'll tell. Mete garuna go hand in hand. Compassion, loving kindness are back and forth. It's really, one is kind of more of a theoretical compassion for everyone. You kind of wish goodwill on everyone in the world. And the other one is more, garuna is more of a warmth, and more of an affection, right? It's also a common girl's name, garuna, it's a beautiful name. And so this idea is that you need both. It's fine to think good of the world, but you also have to be affectionate to the people next to you and the people around you indifferently. There's a story, this is a very famous Buddhist story called the story of Kisagotami. And Kisagotami was a young woman, and she was 8.5 months pregnant. And she really wanted to have her child in her home village. She wanted to give birth in her home village, which was a common custom. She already had a 2-year-old. She had already traveled home to give birth to her first child, and she was going to give birth to the second one. So she goes to her husband. She goes, you know what, we better get moving. We better get going because I feel like I'm going to have a child soon. He goes, well, of course, let's go. And it's about a 3-day walk to her village, and they're walking through the village. This is in India. And they're going through the forest, and they get to a river, and they often cross this river to get to her home village. And it's a very shallow river, but very fast-moving. So you can walk across it. You just have to be careful. So they're walking across it. He's holding the 2-year-old and holding her hand, and she's doing this. And, you know, I've seen my wife pregnant 2 times. At that 8.5-month stage, full of energy, was working and all of these things, but the center of gravity is just a little bit off. Just a little bit off, right? Like getting onto the bus, getting on the subway, you can just, just have to, it's a little off. And so she's having a little bit of trouble on the slippery rocks. He's having trouble because you know what a 2-year-old's like, right? Doesn't want to sit still, wants to go swimming. And the 2-year-old moves, and he's holding on, and he lets go because he doesn't want to pull her down. And he falls in, and his head hits a rock, and she sees the plume of blood in the water. And the 2-year-old shoots down the river, and he shoots down the river. And she's sitting there, and she's trying to get her balance, and she's trying to call out for them. She doesn't hear any screaming. She doesn't know what's going on. She can't see them. She gets to the other side of the river, and she's going up and down the bank. She can't hear them, and she just knows. She knows they're gone. She would hear screaming. She would hear her child. She would hear her husband. They're dead. And the only thing, she's, I have to keep this together. I have to take care of this. This is the only thing I have left. And she goes, I have to get to my village. And she starts walking. And she starts going through labor pain. She knows she's not going to make it to a village. But there's another village close by. And she's on the floor. She goes, I just have to get there. And she can't. And she grabs and she holds the branch of a tree, exactly the way the Buddha's mom had the Buddha, actually, very similar scene. And the baby comes out, and it's stillborn. And she picks it up, umbilical cord still attached, and this dead child, and she has a complete psychological break. And she's horrified, and she can't believe that the child's dead. And she goes, I just need to get medicine for this child. This child is not dead. I just need medicine. And she goes into the village, and she goes up to the first hut. And she kind of pulls back a cloth, and she goes, is anyone here? And this woman comes, and the woman sees her, and she's bloody, and she's holding this dead baby, and she's wet. And she goes, oh, stranger, come in. What's your name? Oh, my name is Kisako to me. Oh, no. Oh, we are here for you. I know we don't know you, but we are here. Anything you need. How can we help? Oh, well, thank you very much. I just need some medicine for my baby. Not feeling so well. Can you have some medicine? Oh, Kisako to me. Oh, I'm so sorry. Your baby's not, medicine won't bring your baby back. But we're here for you. We have compassion for you. We love you. But we don't have any medicine. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much. I don't need any help here, but thank you. She goes to the next hut. Oh, the compassion in the person's face. Oh, Kisako to me. There's no medicine. Let us cremate the baby, and you can stay with us. Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. And she goes from hut to hut to hut. And people are compassionate at first. They're warm at first. But now she's bringing bad omens to the village. She's bringing disease to the village. The corpse is starting to stink. She's wandering around the village square, and she's ruining our children are afraid of her, this crazy woman. And then people start going up to her and trying to grab the corpse of the baby out of her hand, and they're slapping her in the face and saying, come to your senses. You've lost your mind, Kisako to me. No, I just need medicine. And one person in the village goes, you know what? In one village over from here, there's a famous teacher. They call him the Buddha. He's supposedly awesome. Let's go get that guy. So they go get him, and he comes in the village. She sees him. She knows everybody in the village, and no one has been able to help her. And he sees this new person. She runs up to him, and she goes, oh, stranger, I need some help. I need some medicine for my baby. He goes, oh, okay. Well, what's your name? Well, my name is Kisako to me. He goes, oh, Kisako to me. So you need some medicine? He goes, yes. He goes, well, I wish you would come to me sooner. We need to get medicine very quickly for your baby. And she goes, see you people? See? He has medicine. Okay, Kisako to me. You need to go to a hut, and we need to make medicine. You need to get mustard seeds. Mustard seeds are in a lot of religious stories. It's interesting because they're very small. And mustard is very kind of commonly grown in North India and southern Nepal, where the Buddha was from. And go get mustard seeds, but you can't get mustard seeds from a house where anybody's ever died in. And a house meaning like the family, kind of like House of David or something, like, the lineage of that family. Oh, absolutely. I'll find a house. I will get that. Everybody has mustard seeds. I'm sure I can find one. She goes into the hut. Oh, Kisako to me. What do you want? Get out of here. You're bringing bad luck to my house. You're bringing disease to my children. No compassion whatsoever. Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I know I've been a terrible bother, but I just need some mustard seeds. Well, of course we have mustard seeds. Everybody has mustard seeds. And she goes, okay, can I have them? Sure. Just get out of here. I just have a quick question. Has anybody ever died in your house? And Kisako to me looks at the woman's face. And she goes, I lost my child 2 years ago. And I know I'm supposed to be over it. But I'm not. And I'm sorry somebody has died here. Somebody very close. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I never thought to ask how you were doing. I never asked about your suffering. I was worried so much about I'll be back. I'm so sorry. Goes to the next hut. Has anyone ever died here? Father died, and he was old, but he was everything to us. I don't know who to ask for advice. I don't know who to go to when I'm sad. He was that person. Oh, I'm so sorry. She goes from hut to hut to hut, and she sees the anguish of pain and death on the faces around her when they recalled the people that they loved And she walks up to the Buddha, and he cuts the cord, and he puts the baby on the funeral pyre. In a sense, is that we are so consumed with our own self-help, our self-actualization, our self-embetterment, our proving our memory, our proving our energy, improving the way we treat people, improving, which means getting ahead, right? Improving and controlling our anger, or controlling our vices. We're so obsessed with these things in modern society, is that oftentimes, Buddhists say the mindfulness is so much focused on yourself, it is never for anyone else. I took these ideas. I've been teaching Buddhist studies for now about 14 years at different colleges and universities, and now I'm at Penn, where I grew up, which is Philadelphia. And, when I got back to the States after being a monk, and I went to graduate school because I had no skills, so go to graduate school, Buddhism was taught in a very different way than I learned. I'd never actually taken a Buddhist studies course before I became a monk, which is kind of, and so I was like, I want to learn about Buddhism now. And I was struck by the students around me, and wonderful students, intelligent professors, wonderful. Really great experience. But this idea that it was now in Buddhist studies, it was about us, and it was about our career, and how much knowledge we could build up, and how many languages we could learn, and how many books we could read, and how many articles we could write. And then when I got to teach in the classroom, it was more of that, how many, butts in the seats that we have, and how many students come to your course, how many courses are you offering? Will the dean give you a raise? And if your department is good, you can hire more people, and all of these things. And it just seemed it was all about building up the very idea of Buddhist studies. And then they would have mindfulness clubs on campus, and they would advertise them, and Penn is a very career, pre-professional type of place. Donald Trump went there. And so, it's, the students are driven, okay? They're very bright, but they're very, they equate a series of accomplishments with learning. This is what learning is. I need to achieve these certain number of accomplishments, right? And that Buddhism became that, or mindfulness, it comes that way. They make a club, they put it on their resume, they meditate, and they're really good at it. And then they have elections for the mindfulness club, like vice president, treasurer of the mindfulness club. You know what I mean? I was like, what did your parents do to you? And so, and it's like they, and we'll organize, and we'll have meeting times, and it'll be wonderful. So I was really, upset about this, and so I decided to teach a course, and this course is called Living Deliberately. And it's not about Buddhism. We talk about Catholicism, Sufism. We talk about Hasids. We talk about Brahmanic ascetics. We talk about Jains. So I give lectures on this, but there's no papers. There's no exams. There's no reading. I actually highly discourage reading. And we do monastic practice. We create a monastery in the room, which means it's not a self-help system. It's not about finding their true voice, It's not about each one of them being a perfect snowflake, It's not about encouraging them and edifying them and building up their self-esteem, you know what I mean? Trust me, kids today have plenty of self-esteem. They really, really do, okay? So there's not a lack of it. They are, as Penn students like to say, they are positive self-advocates. Positive self-advocates, And I say, I need to get to a bar. So I started this course where there was no achievement. Self-grading, which of course the students love because they think it's going to be easy, right? And they have to take on restrictions, and quite strict restrictions. They have to get up at 5 in the morning every day. They have dressing restrictions. They don't know each other's names. I assign them own names and assign them names that they don't know, but in the languages I'm assigning them are completely insulting. So, because why not, right? And I love them to death. So strict gender separation, which is very strange for them. They slowly, over the course of the semester, speak less and less and less, and they get to at one point for one solid month, they absolutely have no speaking at all, absolute vows of silence, including in their other courses. No electronics whatsoever, no cell phones, no television, no internet whatsoever. They have to get other professors to sign on to this. They have to handwrite their papers in other courses. If another professor, like we have math majors and engineering majors taking this, they do a lot of stuff online, is that they have this dedicated one computer that they can do it, which not connected to the internet, that they can hand in an assignment that way. But a lot of them kind of do all their assignments very early so they don't have to do them during this month. They have eating restrictions. They never restrict the amount they eat, but they have to eat in a very specific way. They have to eat very specific foods, and they can't, no intoxicants whatsoever unless they make it, so my students get very good at making beer. That's a rule I need to change now because I didn't know how good they would be at that. And they do a lot of group activities. We do meditation. And they keep a journal, so they have to write in a journal every half hour. And they have to, and sometimes they get a little self-obsessed, so they have assignments to do. They have to go to a certain place at 5:30 in the morning, and they have to draw everything they see. Or they have assignments to work with each other, but in silence. And in this course, it takes, in a sense, there's a huge waiting list for the course. And so I thought this would be an absolute bomb, but it keeps getting more and more students who tell me over time, and obviously you get to know them extremely well, right? That, because you're reading thousands of pages of journals, you're with them a lot, about, in a sense, that it's not about building up their resume. They actually learn, in a sense, it's not real monastic life, obviously, and it's not even about religion. We don't talk about, I could talk about lectures, the history of monasticism and asceticism, but not about one particular religious philosophy. And that it's amazing over time to watch what you do if you take away the individuality, what they do to each other and how they treat each other. They have strict spending limits, and so if you only have $30 a week to spend, that you start combining with the other students to buy food. They start working together in silence. They start planning out their agendas in the day. They even punish, in a sense, each other. They watch each other. One student, for example, she was walking down kind of the main walk of the campus, and a student, most of their friends know that they're doing this, so they don't get bothered a lot. But this person hadn't seen her a while and came up, and she's like, "Oh, hi." And she went to wave, and waving, you're not allowed to look at anybody in the eyes, and you're not allowed to speak to them, and you're not allowed to signal them. And so she admitted it to the group that she had waved by accident to somebody. And so I don't make punishments, the students punish each other. They have penance councils. We bring good Catholicism in. And so the penance for this girl in this thing, which I thought was a pretty minor infraction, I would have just said, try better, I guess, but not Penn students. They said she had to count every step, every door, and every window in her building. Well, her building is 36 stories tall, okay? And so she spent 2 days counting every door, every window, every step, every closet door, up and down that building. And she is amazing. She goes, "You know what? You're in a building," she'd been in that building for 2 years. I thought I knew it. I didn't know anything about that building. I didn't know anybody about who worked in the building, who cleaned the building. I didn't know where the heat came from, the electricity came from. Now I can see all this. And I, in a sense, have an awareness of a building. I'm so obsessed with awareness of myself and building up myself that I ignore the very place I live, physically, which sounds kind of stupid, but if you don't start with that, you can't start with real mindfulness. And then over time, they have to design their own kind of acts of kindness that they can't put on their CV. So when they're out of moments of silence, when they come out of this. Can you actually do things for other people without letting other people know you're doing it? So anonymous acts. And it's amazing how clever they are at coming up with it at the end of this course. And amazing what happens if you take all of those electronics away, all of that distraction away. I have one student who sort of vaguely liked math. He was in economics. He was going into finance. And but math kind of got in the way. He didn't like. There's a lot of students in finances, they hate the math part, but they like the business part of it, right? And so he had no television, no internet, so he started doing math for me. He started kind of doing math on his own because he got bored. And now he's got a full scholarship to do a PhD in math at Columbia, a person who's not a math major, right? So is that he's like, wow, if I wasn't made to do something, if it wasn't an accomplishment, my mind really wanted just to figure it out, not to get through it to figure out the answer, but to actually understand why I was doing it. And it's those little stories that I get, and that's why I keep, teaching this course now. When I'm actually taking the students to Thailand for a short period next year, the next group of students. But I'm kind of running a little late on time, so I'm going to stop it here, and if you have questions about the course, or if you have questions about mindfulness in general, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you very much.
If you have a question, we can raise your hand, and then we'll come around with you the microphone.
I'm a little confused,
Okay.
besides being ignorant, but I've spent many years traveling in Southeast Asia, a lot of it with monks and people who are Buddhists, and spent some time with the Buddhist religion. And what I'm confused about is one of the basic things that appeals to me about the religion is the self-awareness being a path to control over emotions. And the gods that they have, the black god with anger, and what I was taught over there was that mindfulness was a way of improving, of getting rid of bad traits and improving yourself so that you achieve that sense of enlightenment. I'm hearing that that kind of self-improvement is not what you're teaching and not what you think it's about. Can you help me understand that?
And I think it's a great question. It matters what we mean by self-improvement. If we mean the knowledge and solidifying the knowledge of the one true self that is supposed to be in it. Buddhism is the only major world religion that doesn't posit a soul, or doesn't posit a self, right? And this idea is that if we do kind of self-improvement exercises all the time, we become, in a sense, self-obsessed. We harden the self. We make a vague sense of self into something that is actually real. We create an identity when, in a sense, we don't have an identity. Identity is made by the people around us. It's made by our genetics. It's made by the environment. None of us have shaped our own bones, and none of us have chosen our eye color or hair color. Most of us, I don't think, choose our own social security number. We were given a language when we were born, and we learned that language in a hometown. I didn't choose my hometown, either did you. We go into a world, a networked world of community. And awareness for many Buddhists is being aware of that. Yourself is those around you. You are made by those around you. And yes, more control over your emotions, more control over your vision helps that awareness of others, right? Is that if you are in a fight with somebody, you're angry with somebody, you want to win that fight, right? And you become, in a sense, it's all about defense of whatever this is to win that. And you are blinded by the emotion of anger. You also can be blinded by the emotion of joy, of course, as you know, is that you get so happy with yourself and so edified with yourself. I mean, you've edified yourself so much, is that everything is, in a sense, oh, look what I've done. Look what I've achieved, while you're ignoring those around you. And so many Buddhists argue that the way of improving the self is, in a sense, to understand what the self is. And the self is a network of influences. I hope that helps.
This will actually be our last question.
Oh boy, what pressure suddenly.
It better be awesome.
Yeah, right. Well, I can't promise that. I think that in describing your course, I had two questions. I'm going to just cut it in half. You're a benevolent dictator in that
absolutely.
class. But the techniques sound a lot like a whole bunch of quasi-religions, cultish kind of practices of superstition.
Absolutely right.
All those sorts
I'm
of
so
things.
glad you asked this. Okay, good.
And so while what you just described to this gentleman, of course, sounds wonderful, but the techniques to get there have to do a lot with social control, mental control by something external from you. You could call that community.
It's actually more physical control. It's physical control.
Sure, which is a very typical technique
of
like
course.
you said, the military.
Separation from family.
All those sorts of
yes,
things.
Absolutely.
Yes. So if you could address that a little bit, because that
I'm
seems very
so glad
anathema
to.
to a lot of my values.
That's right. My first lecture in this course is on Jim Jones. That's how I start the entire course. I taught the entire course. And there's a great, actually, teacher I went to school in Boston, and I was training to be a public school teacher, and she was my kind of mentor, you know. And she had a course on fascism, right? And she didn't tell the students it was a course on fascism. And she made them chant in the morning. She put up big pictures of herself, you know what I mean? And if they get more points if they turned each other in, you know what I mean? She labeled them and ranked them, right? And so they would have outward signs of this. And the thing is, it's a good lesson to students. It's so easy to become that guru, right? It's so easy to do that, right? So we start off talking about this, and that's why they each get, in a sense, a partner in class, and they each get a chance. They get a chance to that I will be silent, and they get it in the class to publicly disagree with me, and they get to complain all they want, and that I don't control what they think, and I want them to think differently. That's why I don't teach one religion about it, and eventually over the course, like for a month, we don't meet at all. That they only meet with each other. That I'm there in a sense to read their journals, but they can also kind of staple pages together that they don't want me to read, that they want somebody else to read. And so we put in a sense a lot of kind of safety, and that's why I started off this way, because it's so easy to do that. But in terms of controlling kind of the self, controlling the physical self, getting rid of those markers of identity, that you have to dismantle that notion about I'm here to take a class to achieve something to get a grade. And how am I going to do that? How am I going to influence the professor? How am I going to find a way of getting the grade I want? And that there isn't a way to do that. There's simply rules that you follow. And the people who enforce those rules are the students around them. And then every week, that group who controls the rules switches. And so we change that assignment, so which they vote on. So we try to put in things like that.
More broadly in Buddhism in general.
Yeah. Well, monastic life is about not all about it, but one of the first things is obedience. Absolute obedience. And that this is not about finding yourself. This is about following the rules. Now, hopefully over time, by incredible awareness of others, incredible meditation, study, helping others, and doing duties, Buddhists are called dasas. Dasas means, Buddhist monks are called dasas in Southeast Asia. That means, the word literally means slave, okay? Is that they are slave to the community. So there's plenty of times when I would rather be meditating and I didn't want to go bless a water buffalo, or I didn't want to marry a couple or something like that. But I have to do as long as it doesn't break one of my precepts, I have to do what the lay people ask. I have to do what my abbot asks. I would go downriver to teach at a monastic school, teach young Buddhist novices and things like this. And so that you have to, in a sense, get rid of the kind of old trappings you know about yourself in order to get to greater levels of awareness. But the interesting thing about it is that the abbot has the same exact rules as you. They have the same rules of celibacy, the same rules of poverty, same rules of possessions. So you can't build it up. Now, there's plenty of Buddhist groups in the world, Buddhist sects, that have abandoned a lot of these rules. That you have massive monasteries, that you have large endowments, that you have one of the largest car collections in the world is owned by a Japanese monk, for example. And so you can build those things up, right? But you have to be constantly aware of doing that. And I think, and that's why I bring that up, because I think that's the first question students should ask is, who the hell are you?